All right, we are live. No, you know what? I read it in February. So we're January, some cold month.
I was gonna read it because it's on my to be read, and then Jessica posted her Goodreads review, and I was like, I don't know if I want to read it now.
I'm sorry. I'm glad you decided to read it anyway, so we can talk about it.
So does that mean you did not favorably review This Star Won't Go Out?
No, I did not.
She put 4 stars out on Goodreads.
I put what?
You
Four
put
stars
4 stars out.
Four stars out, which means he only colored in one.
Yes.
But the last star will not go out.
Oh wow.
Anyway.
That was, you know what? I have to give you props for that. That was pretty
Yeah,
good.
that was perfect.
Try to stay on topic here.
Okay, let me explain why I gave it a 1-star rating. So, I was sad about the fact that they decided to do the book the way that they did, because I felt like this, like, clearly Esther had an impact on people who knew her, and like I sort of got that from the different reflections from the people that wrote it for the book. But what I felt like was that this was like 400 pages of what could have been source material for a really good book about Esther's life and the impact that she had on people. But instead, they just did this like giant document dump of her diaries and people's essays and transcripts of her videos and her fictional writing. Like, it was just a big document dump, and stuff. Some stuff wasn't even labeled well, and I was just like, you could have done so much more with this, but instead you just like threw it all together, and then it was just like a lot of stuff to slog through. So, yeah, I was disappointed that that I feel like it was just kind of like, oh, people are going to read this because of Nerd Criteria and because of The Fault in Our Stars, and so I felt like they didn't put as much effort into weaving everything into like a coherent story and explaining, the impact of her life in a meaningful way. So, how about you guys? Did you get more out of it than I did, I hope?
No, well, I didn't. I kind of felt the same way you did about the document dump, but also it felt kind of like we're putting her up on this pedestal, and while her diary entries did make her more human, and we could see that more complex side of it. It's more like she's amazing, and these are all the things that we did. Not that that's bad. I don't want to like diminish anybody's experience, but I didn't feel like I needed to read that.
Right. Yeah, I enjoyed the parts of the book where other people were talking about their relationship with her much more than I enjoyed reading her own writing, which was just, it's like a 14-year-old diary. Like, I don't want to go back and read my diaries from when I was that age. Like, they were the same, like full of like text speak and dramatic retellings of every single moment of the day, and it's like, okay.
Text speak was hard for me. I never wrote like that. And it's really hard I find it really hard for me to read.
Yeah. Meryl, do you want to share your thoughts?
I gave it 3 stars. Mostly, though, I agree with you in that I gave it 3 stars because I thought that the reflections by other people were very enjoyable. And so, like, reading like very well edited, thought out things from other people reflecting on their time with Esther was really interesting to me, and I thought that I got a lot from that. And I really liked the fact that like they included a little bit of each thing, and that they made some effort to try to make it cohesive. So I have a hard time like rating things low stars usually unless I hate them. So 3 is like, I don't regret spending the time to read it, but I will never recommend it, and I have a lot of critical thoughts about it, and I don't think it's... So I mean, a lot of what both of you said, I didn't think that she was, and I don't want, I know it's like, it's hard to talk about like people who have died and like, especially people who have died about cancer, but I think in the same light, you can't just glorify somebody because they died of cancer. Like, and the whole time I was thinking, like, what makes Esther different than everybody else in Catitude? What makes Esther, like, would John Green have spent that much time with her as opposed to another member of that community if she didn't have cancer? And, like, while, like, I understand that she meant a lot to them, at the same time, it felt like they kept saying they didn't want to dwell on the cancer, but that's all they talked about for the majority of the book. And, like, the other things were just kind of sprinkled in. And I also really didn't like how the pictures were not chronological. That, like, really confused me a lot.
When everything else was.
Yeah, everything was chronological, and then it was like, Esther, 2010, Esther, 2006.
Right.
But I didn't think it was bad. I just didn't think it was remarkable. And I felt like she just sounded like an average 15-year-old that was dealing with crisis with the loving community.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And I didn't give it any stars because I feel like how can I put a star rating on somebody's life? You know, I mean I could put a star rating on how it was chosen to put together, but I mean ultimately it's about her life and her impact on other people's lives, and I don't feel it's my place to judge that, you know.
Right, and yeah, for me it wasn't like I didn't feel like I was rating her life or her story. I felt like I was rating the fact that somebody decided to compile a book and do it in such a manner that made it difficult for somebody who didn't know her personally to really get a lot out of it, at least for me.
Yeah, and I think that's why, like, I felt I didn't think I was rating her life, and when I say like she seems like an average girl, I think it's because of the way that it was put together. Like, I was, like you said, reading like a 15-year-old's diary. I was reading like fan fiction, like esque type communities where like the chats from like Catitude, I just like skimmed them. I was like, it's just basically saying like, oh, Esther, like 20 times. Like you could have edited some of that out to some of the more meaningful, you know, conversations that she had, and like putting it together in such a way that everything was cohesive and I could understand how, like, what made her different, and like what made her cancer different, or what made her as a 15-year-old different, or what made her presence in an online community different. And I'm sure that it was, it's just I don't think it came across as cohesively as it could have.
Right, exactly. I felt like there were moments, especially in people's reflections, where they talked about her and the impact that she had on their life, but that was like such a small part of what made up this book, that so much of it was just like, okay, she's just like this average teenager, and here's her like chat room conversations with her friends, and it felt like this book was more of an indulgence for the people who knew her personally, you know, who already got the whole thing about her personality and didn't have to spend a lot of time explaining that to people, and so instead they just got to relive her words, her personality, you know, relive those moments in the chat room when they first found out that she had cancer, and, you know, and like that's great, and that's probably a nice thing to have when somebody that you know has died, but that doesn't mean that it's something that comes across coherently to the people who didn't know her.
Right.
I agree, and I think like the fact that they publicized it as, and I think Jessica, you touched on this in Goodreads, but like the fact that it piggybacked off of like the Tiffios craze and all of the things in Nerdfighteria, and the fact that they presented it as something that could really give you insight into Esther and into like Nerdfighteria, when it was more kind of a memorial to her and like something that was comforting to the people that knew her. And I think that there's nothing wrong with publishing a book like that, and obviously there are tons of people who love it and who were inspired by it, but I think at the same time you have to have, I don't know, like you have to have kind of a perspective of who she is before you can fully understand what impact she's made, and that wasn't made. I think it needed to be made more clear than it was.
An advantage, though, I thought. Okay, so we've got this book that so many people are reading, who may not have known what This Star Won't Go Out was before they picked it up, and now have the opportunity to
Sure.
contribute to that cause, or join Nerdfighteria and help decrease world suck and all of. I mean, anything. I think anything that brings Nerdfighteria to the front has some sort of like inherent value because, well, I mean, Nerdfighteria does awesome things.
Do you
Yeah.
think then, though, that anybody who didn't already know what Nerdfighteria was would, like, well, not anybody, obviously some people, but I feel like it was written and people are discovering the book through Nerdfighteria or discovering Tifios and then Nerdfighteria and then Esther, rather than just picking up This Star Won't Go Out.
Could be. I don't know. I know that I was at Target, and I don't know how many people just kind of wander through the book section at Target. So
Yeah.
that's where I
Sure.
got my copy. And I wander through the book section at Target and just pick things up. And I think most of the books are face out, so
Yeah.
you're like, oh, she's relatively cute. I wonder what this is about. And you've got John Green's name on the cover.
Right.
It's true. And I guess, like, anybody who is struggling with, like, young cancer might be interested in reading it and reading an account of, like, how she made a difference or how she coped with it.
Yeah. I guess my one fear, if people had not picked up This Star Won't Go Out but were not familiar with Nerdfighteria, is that they might get the impression that it's more like just teenage fangirls, which which it kind of is in a lot of ways. Like, I've gone to at least one local Nerdfighter gathering here, and it was like pretty much all teenage girls, and it was kind of awkward. And then my husband and I found one other guy who was there who was our age, so we just like went off in a corner. We're like, okay, we need to get away from all these like 14-year-olds. So, but anyway, yeah, I mean, I don't. I feel like if somebody picked up the book and made it through the whole thing, and they might decide this is a community, that's worth being part of, or I don't know. But if they were just like reading her diary entries and the Catitude chats and things, it seems like a very like tight-knit group of teenage girls that I don't know that people would necessarily feel like they wanted to be part of.
Or would feel like they had an ability to be a part of.
Yeah.
It's already
Yeah.
so close in it.
Right, exactly.
And I think at least now, from what I understand, Nerdfighteria is kind of like out there and in the larger world just because of the Tifio success, and John's been kind of everywhere, and they talk about it.
Yeah, I've seen in at least one place, maybe in a few different articles, journalists referring to fans of The Fault in Our Stars as nerdfighters, like as if nerdfighter means a fan of The Fault in Our Stars. I was like, no, you don't understand. It's been around for so much longer than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what's interesting? One of the interesting things I thought was there are some things that Esther says that I can totally see where John got it, like the whole thing about infinities.
Yeah.
And there was something else that I saw when I was skimmed back through it this morning. I was like, oh, okay, that I can see little bits of Esther in Hazel. And I was watching, I think it was an interview with Esther's parents, and they were talking about how, as they were reading The Fault in Our Stars, it's like, oh, that's Esther, all of these things come from Esther, and then they like took a step back and just had to take a step back in order to really enjoy and get into the story and see Hazel Grace for Hazel Grace and not Hazel Grace as
Esther
inspired by Esther.
Right.
Was Grace taken because of Esther? Like Hazel Grace, Esther Grace?
I don't know. I've got the box set of the audiobook, and I think I think John talks about it in the on the DVD at the end. I can check and get back to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be curious.
Yeah.
What did you think of the inclusion of her fiction at the end?
I didn't read it.
I didn't either.
Okay. Well.
I was so frustrated with the book at that point, and like I almost abandoned it, halfway through. But I was like, I have to finish this for book club. And then when I got to the end and it was fiction, I was like, okay, I don't have to read this. And I'm done now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that she is a pretty good writer for her age, but so the first one I was just like, I skimmed through. I was like, I can't read this. And then the next couple were actually not as much fiction as they were like her telling her story as fiction. So there's like one excerpt of her talking about like when she found out she had cancer, but then she turned it into fiction by changing the name of the character. But her parents like made a note that was like, this is actually true. She just changed her name to Carly. And like, so I thought those were interesting, like reading, because obviously like YA had an effect on her, and I actually think that she was for like her age, she was actually a pretty good writer. But
I wonder if her writing about finding out that she had cancer was like cathartic for her. It's one of those writing as a way to come to terms with what's happening, but pretending it's somebody else as a way of distancing.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting because she started it off talking in first person, and then halfway through switched to making it another girl, but it was like still continuous. It was interesting. It was really short. It was like 2 pages, but yeah. I thought it was cool that they could donate her cornea.
What's that?
I didn't know that you could donate anything after having chemo. I thought it was cool that she donated her corneas.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. Pam made a comment on the on our Facebook page about The Fault in Our Stars, and I'm sad that I read it.
Oh no, is it a spoiler?
No, it's not a spoiler. I wanted to experience it without any outside influences. Yeah. So my niece went and saw it last night too, and she texted me afterward, and I'm like, I have not talked to her yet because I know she's going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I would have finished it had we not been discussing it. I was talking to my mom yesterday. I was like, I have to finish like 300 more pages of this book. Because I literally decided, not yesterday, but the day before at 11 p.m., I was like, maybe I'll read it. And so I downloaded it on Kindle. And I was like, and I like put it on my phone on the bus on the way to work. I was like, oh, like immediately I was like, oh, I already see what Jessica's saying. So I was like, but I really want to talk about it. And so I felt like I was obligated to finish it before I could talk about it.
Well, I don't know. I think we can have discussions about things we don't finish, because if you look at the Reader's Bill of Rights, you have the right not to finish something that you started, and just because you don't finish it doesn't mean you can't talk about it. And talk about why you chose not to finish it.
Right.
That's valuable conversation.
Yep.
I'll keep that in mind next time I run out of time to read the book.
I
said I'll keep that in mind next time I run out of time to read the book.
Yeah.
I just didn't finish it because it didn't agree with my philosophical time management skills.
Yeah, okay, so I'll tell you now, we're reading Catch-22 this month.
Yeah.
Yeah, start it soon.
Yes,
I tried reading that book like 4 times and just stopped every time. We'll see. I'm in the middle of The Virgin Suicides, which I started before I realized that we were going to do
Isn't that one July?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll probably finish that one first, and then see how I'm doing.
Wrong order, Meryl.
I know, but I am already halfway through. I can't stop. And no.
You say so.
You'll still remember.
It's a shorter book too.
I saw the movie when I was in like college.
I saw it when I was in high school, I think, with my dad, but I don't remember. I remember one scene. So.
I've never seen it or read it, so it'll be a new story.
New
for me.
read for you.
Yep. I have read Catch-22 before, but I'm going.
Read it again.
I will read it again. I read it probably like 5 years ago, and I didn't particularly enjoy it. But then I read something online that was comparing it to the Wayside School stories, and which I like loved growing up, and I was like,
right.
What?
No. Yeah, those were great growing up. Go ahead.
Yeah. And so I was like, if I approach it like as if it's like one of those kind of books, maybe I would have a different view of it. So I'm gonna think about that when I'm reading it this time.
See, I'm gonna have to go. Man, I haven't thought about Louis Sacker in ages.
I know.
I mean, I don't even think like my kids read Holes because it's on the bookshelf in my classroom.
Yeah.
But it doesn't like. I forget that he wrote that, and there's a boy in the girls' bathroom, and this was my summer reading program when I was in like elementary school.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever read Wayside.
They were like my favorite. They were some of my favorite books.
Sideways Stories from Wayside School.
Yeah.
Wayside School is falling down. I think there's a third one, actually.
There's 3, and then there's also Sideways Arithmetic from Wayside School, which
I remember that too.
Loved doing as a kid because I was a nerd.
Hey, you know what? In 4th grade, I read a book about how to do math from left to right, and it like completely blew my mind and changed the way I do math.
Nice.
I understand. I am that nerd too.
Yeah.
Math as soon as I could in high school. I dropped math and tried to convince my guidance counselor to let me take an extra photo lab, and she said I couldn't take 2 photo labs in one semester. And so I said, can I take a study hall and go to the photo lab? And she said, sure. So that was my math experience as a child.
Wow. Yeah, but that's cool, because I took the classes in summer so I could take more band. In my senior year of high school, second semester has 4 bands in a 7-period class day.
What? They wouldn't let me do that. They're like, you can't have the same class twice. And it was like...
Well, it wasn't the same band. It was 4 different bands.
Like jazz band, like regular band.
Marching band.
Rock band. Rubber band.
Wow. Okay.
Drumline.
Dude, Drumline's cool.
Drumline is so cool. The movie's kind of okay, but actual drumlines are really cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, we have gone.
We've gone way off topic.
All the way over here.
Are there any other questions we wanted to discuss about it before we?
I don't think so.
Give up.
Before we give up.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm solid. Just let's do a chat about The Fault in Our Stars movie. Yay! And there's a thing in the group. There's a post in the group.
On Facebook.
On Facebook.
I will try to make it. I'm gonna be out of town the next 2 weekends though, so if not,
Okay.
look forward to your commentary.
Sounds good.
Our hope is that we can involve more of our book club in maybe this, and then that would transfer over into having more people in our discussions, because there are I think 80 people in our group or something like that.
Why is it like
Yeah.
always the same like 5 people, but everyone else votes on the books? They never
They
read them.
don't. They don't
And
have
it-
like 13 votes.
It bothers me because I don't think you should vote if you're not going to read them, because then it skews the vote.
Well,
I
maybe
agree.
maybe they read them, but they don't want to discuss them.
Right. That could be too. I mean, like, I want to read A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. I was sad that it won last time. And, yeah.
I don't remember what I voted for. Sorry.
Well, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn wasn't on our list for,
Not for this
This-
one. Yeah.
not for this one, not for June and July. It was for the 2 months before June and July.
It's like the first one on the list, too.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's alright. Alright, I'm going to stop the broadcast.
Okay.
since, we are finished here. Doot.